the Canada-U.S. trade war. Can Trudeau handle Trump's tariff threats? What happens when two of the most powerful nations in the world clash over trade? When old allies become enemies, and tariffs could dictate the fate of millions? Right now, that's not just a question on the horizon, it's happening. Earlier, Donald Trump made headlines, again. The new U.S. president, who swore to put America first, promised to impose 25% tariffs on Canadian goods. But as we've seen, threats are one thing, action is another. So, why is February 1st the date everyone's watching? Will Canada be ready? Or are we already in too deep? The pressure on Canada's leadership is mounting. Just days after Trump's inauguration, Canadian ministers like Foreign Minister Melanie Joly and Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc were scrambling to craft a response to this looming trade war. Joly was quick to assure Canadians, "We have a plan." But let's be honest, can that plan withstand the storm? And here's the kicker. The Trudeau government is facing its own internal crisis. Canada's internal politics are at a breaking point. Rising unemployment, the housing crisis, and political leadership under siege. Are the political leaders in Ottawa up for the challenge? With inflation spiraling and the cost of living skyrocketing, the Canadian public is increasingly fed up. Trudeau's leadership has been under fire, especially with the impending federal elections in 2025. As unemployment rises and the real estate bubble bursts, can he hold the reins, or will Canadians be looking for change? Let's talk about the premiers, because when it comes to this tariff war, it's not just Trudeau who's feeling the heat. Ontario's Doug Ford is already talking about dollar-for-dollar retaliation. But here's the twist. Not everyone agrees. Alberta's Danielle Smith and Saskatchewan's Scott Moe are taking a more targeted approach, calling for less drastic measures. So, what do we have here? Disarray? Or a calculated strategy to protect Canada's most vulnerable industries? And let's not forget the contradictions. On one hand, Trudeau's fighting to preserve jobs and our economic relationships. On the other, we have provinces holding their breath, waiting for the next tweet from President Trump to see if they're about to be hit with tariffs on their goods. Feels a little like a game of political ping pong, doesn't it? But here's where things get real. Canada has structural weaknesses, real vulnerabilities. The manufacturing sector is already struggling. Our economy is heavily dependent on U.S. trade, and now we might lose out on billions in foreign direct investment, as American companies may look elsewhere if tariffs make it too costly to do business here. Oh, and remember, the housing market is a ticking time bomb. Add sky-high interest rates to the equation, and you have a recipe for disaster. Could all of this be a wake-up call? Or is Canada too complacent, lulled into a false sense of security by years of smooth relations with the U.S.? What happens when the U.S. turns from ally to economic adversary? Speaking of adversaries, let's not forget one of President Trump's earliest executive actions after taking office: the National Emergency Declaration at the southern U.S. border with Mexico. Trump wasted no time in signaling a hardline stance on immigration and border control. Troops were sent to the border. Policies like "Remain in Mexico" were reinstated. And the message was clear: America will protect its borders, no exceptions. But here's the catch for Canada. The U.S. border situation isn't just about Mexico. Trump's rhetoric around border security didn't stop there. If this administration is already signaling national emergencies on its southern border, how long before Canada's border, our border, is next on the chopping block? Canada has already started taking action. To counter the growing pressure, the Canadian government is investing a staggering $1 billion into border security. That's a huge move. But with Trump's America First agenda, it begs the question, could the U.S. make similar moves at the border with Canada? What happens if border tensions rise as a result of these tariffs? And when the U.S. goes full throttle on immigration and trade, will Canada be forced to follow suit? Now, let's bring it back to President Trump. When he signed his executive orders, he made it clear: America will no longer enrich other countries. What his stance on energy policies? He declared it as a national energy emergency. Expect an even tougher stance on Canada's oil exports. The U.S. will drill, baby, drill, making Canada's energy sector face even more pressure. And we can't ignore that the US is going full throttle on the America First agenda, putting even more strain on Canada's manufacturing and agricultural sectors. And while President Trump dreams of making America a manufacturing giant again, Canada's economy, reliant on US demand, might just be left scrambling for scraps. But hold on, there's more. Trump also wants to upend the global trade order, and Canada could be caught in the middle of that whirlwind. Let's put the stakes in perspective. In 2023, the US accounted for a staggering 77% of Canada's total exports. That's nearly 3/4 of Canada's export market. So, what are the most vulnerable industries? Let's break it down. Canada's top exports to the US include oil, gas, and distillates, worth a massive $128 billion. That's just one category. Then we have automotive vehicles at $58.2 billion, machinery at $33.7 billion, and plastics at $14 billion. These exports alone make up nearly a third of Canada's GDP, underlining just how deeply reliant Canada is on the US as a trade partner. So, if Trump imposes those 25% tariffs, it's not just a hit to Canada's trade balance. It's a direct assault on Canada's economic lifeblood. And when you're dealing with sectors this crucial, automotive, oil, machinery, can Canada afford to lose those billions? And how will businesses respond when these tariffs start hitting? Will they just pass on the cost to consumers, or could this push Canadian industry into a severe slowdown? And let's not forget the immediate consequences on the price of goods in Canada. Experts are predicting significant price hikes across various sectors due to Trump's proposed tariffs. For example, motor vehicles and basic metals, both major industries for Canada, will likely see higher price increases. The median price increase for most sectors could reach as high as 0.7%. Not huge, perhaps. But when you're talking billions in exports, even a small price shift could hit hard. Sectors like automotive vehicles, which make up $58.2 billion of Canada's exports to the US, could be hit particularly hard. Expect higher costs for cars and parts. But the fallout won't stop at the Canada-U.S. border. If Trump follows through on his tariff plans, the ripple effect will hit economies worldwide. A recent analysis projects a global decline in GDP as a result of the 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico, alongside a 10% tariff on China. And here's the big takeaway. Canada and Mexico will bear the brunt of this. By 2040, Canada could see a nearly 2% decline in GDP as a result of these tariffs. That's billions of dollars in lost output, translating into fewer jobs, less investment, and lower wages. Canada, alongside Mexico, is projected to experience the largest economic contraction from these tariffs. But it's not just Canada that's impacted. The US itself is expected to see an $841 billion decline in GDP by 2040. An economic blow that could affect everything from government spending to domestic industries. So, while Canada and Mexico feel the immediate pain, this trade war will ripple out to affect the global economy. What does this mean for the world at large? A slowdown in trade, rising costs, and perhaps even the collapse of certain markets. No one will be immune from the consequences of Trump's tariffs. So, what's the endgame here? Is Canada ready to face these tariffs head-on? Or will we buckle under the pressure of an increasingly hostile trade relationship with the US? If Trudeau and Canada's leaders don't act fast, we might find ourselves staring down a decade of economic losses. So, will Canada survive this second Trump era? Can Trudeau's government keep it together amidst rising economic turmoil, a divided nation, and the ever-looming threat of tariffs? Trudeau tried to offer reassurance. "We've been here before," he said. That is true. But it's not obvious that this time will be any easier. And we may be here for a while. With so much uncertainty ahead, we can only wait and see. But one thing's for sure, Canada is in for a tough ride. Only time will tell whether Canada can weather this storm, or whether we'll be swept up in the chaos. If you want to stay updated on all the latest developments surrounding Trump's tariffs, Canada's economy, and the political battle ahead, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to check out our last video on the economic impact of Trump's proposed tariffs. If you missed it, you won't want to miss the next update. Stay tuned because the storm is far from over. Like, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you don't miss the next update on this ongoing political saga. Thanks for watching.